Welcome everyone to History Gone Wilder, part of Half History Will Travel. I'm your host, the Wilder historian, Dr. Lucas Wilder, and last time Schofield fought the battles of Franklin and Nashville and oversaw the surrender of the Army of Tennessee and North Carolina. Now he grapples with Reconstruction and discussions about African American civil rights. If you like what I do, please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already, join the Patreon page, and purchase something from one of my online stores. Every little bit helps. Thank you. Following the surrender of Joseph E. Johnston to William T. Sherman in North Carolina, Sherman marched his troops to Washington, D.C. to take part in the Grand Review. Schofield and his troops remained in North Carolina to oversee the state militarily. One of his first orders of business was dealing with the newly freed African Americans. Refugee camps sprang up around Union armies and encampments. With the United States demobilizing, it would become more and more difficult to feed the refugees, so he broke up the camps and encouraged them to go home. But he also advised former owners to pay the returning freedmen a living wage. When asked during this period about civil rights for African Americans, he shied away from endorsing black suffrage. He may have been for immediate emancipation, but he still held the predominant racial attitudes of the time that they shouldn't receive the right to vote, at least not at the moment. He advocated for teaching them first before they were allowed to take part in the political system. In a general order sent out to the citizens of North Carolina under the authority of himself, Schofield ordered that parental authority or guardianship over minors or the infirmed who didn't have anyone capable of supporting them be given to former owners. By June 1865, part of the weight fell off of Schofield's shoulders when a governor was appointed and his civil duties came to an end in North Carolina. Schofield asked for a leave to go visit family, but Ulysses S. Grant had other plans. During the war, France supported a takeover of the Mexican government, and having a monarchy so close to the United States threatened American small R Republican values. Grant had already dispatched Philip Sheridan and 50,000 men to the Mexican border, but they weren't to invade, but indirectly support the Mexican rebels trying to oust the French. Grant and a Mexican leader came up with a plan to further assist the Mexicans. Schofield was to become a major general in the Mexican army and recruit a force from the border to fight the French. The pay for the soldiers would come from loans given to Mexico from the United States. After serving their enlistment, the U.S. soldiers would be eligible for Mexican citizenship. President Andrew Johnson's cabinet battled over this course of action, with William Seward, the Secretary of State, meeting with Schofield to convince him of the problems of his mission. He convinced Schofield to go to Paris to talk to the French government about the situation. Seward appeared to place the future of American relations with France on Schofield's shoulders. Schofield cited his natural love of peace and the slow progress of the loan negotiations as his chief reasons for finally deciding to go to France. But his natural prudence was also a factor. The Mexican expedition was fraught with uncertainty and difficulty, while a trip to Paris would be less risky and far more comfortable. It was November before Schofield set sail for Europe. At a Thanksgiving-style meal in Paris, Schofield touted the United States' ability and values by emphasizing that the great lesson of the Civil War was how a relatively limited government of a great people could raise vast armies and navies whose physical and moral qualities, discipline and mobility have never before been equaled, and then this vast army, as soon as its work was done, was quietly disbanded, and every man went to his home as quietly as the Christian goes back from church on the Sabbath morning. During his time in France, he tried to reiterate to the French government that the United States would not support French involvement in Mexico and advised them to pull their troops out. He met with Napoleon III and other dignitaries. They were incredibly interested in the Civil War and asked Schofield about the campaigns in which he participated. Although Schofield didn't do anything that changed the trajectory of events in Mexico by visiting France, his presence reiterated that the United States disagreed with French policy. Eventually, the French withdrew from Mexico, and Maximilian was executed. When Schofield returned to the United States in 1866, he was made commander of Virginia in this early stage of Reconstruction. African Americans began heading to urban areas, looking for work, and before Schofield took control of Virginia, federal authorities instituted a pass system for entering the capital, showing that the person that wanted to enter did indeed have a job to go to. This resulted in tension between the African American community and the United States Army, as well as Richmond's police force. Schofield worked with Olive Rhodes Howard, the head of the Freedmen's Bureau, to arrange for transportation elsewhere for freedmen to find jobs. This helped ease tensions. When Richmond's streetcars refused to allow any black passengers, Schofield helped to integrate the car system, although it did result in segregation and the creation of black-only and white-only cars. The number of black-only cars would decrease as time went on. One court case that got Schofield's attention in Virginia occurred when Dr. James Watson had a carriage accident with a black man who tried to pass him on the road. The damage was minor, but Watson felt that the attempt to pass him and his family was an insult to his wife and daughter. The next day, Watson found the man and began to beat him with his cane. When the black man tried to run away, Watson shot him. The local police didn't try Watson and released him. Schofield, to establish some kind of justice, arrested him, citing martial law. President Johnson ordered the military commission dissolved and Watson released. When the individual states were debating the 14th Amendment, which guaranteed citizenship to African American men and women, as well as banning from public office those who haven't previously taken an oath as a member of Congress, or as an officer of the United States, or as a member of any state legislature, or as an executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid to comfort to the enemies thereof, but Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. Schofield claimed that he fought to get Virginia to ratify the amendment. He argued that the real enemy to freedmen and women were the poor whites, and if Congress banned the old leadership of the South from obtaining political office, that African Americans would be subjected to worse conditions. He felt that the lower-class whites were unfit to run for or hold office, and that it would result in what he called bad government throughout the South. This elitist mentality continues throughout his private writings about the amendment. He referred to the poor whites and the newly freed slaves as ignorant and vicious masses. When Congress took over Reconstruction and put ex-Confederate states under military authorities, Schofield continued to oversee Virginia. With that power, he could replace politicians, but he found it difficult to find someone in the middle of the road politically. He shied away from appointing any radical one way or another. He did remove the governor of Virginia and replaced him, which gained him the moniker of King Schofield by ex-rebels, as they felt they existed in a monarchy under Schofield's rule. In late 1867 and into 1868, two events encompassed Schofield's life as commander of Virginia and beyond. Virginia's Constitutional Convention to hopefully return to the Union was being held. On the national stage, President Andrew Johnson battled with his cabinet, particularly his inherited Secretary of War from the Lincoln administration, Edwin Stanton. Schofield used his power to lobby Virginia delegates to not include or to vote against a required oath to prevent ex-Confederates to join the Virginia government and hold office in the state. This followed his opinion that such an oath would exclude experienced and well-educated Virginians, resulting in bad government ran by inexperienced poor whites or blacks. When Johnson attempted to remove Stanton as Secretary of War, Congress began impeachment proceedings, arguing that the President violated the Tenure of Office Act. Amidst the chaos of the impeachment, Schofield's name was brought up as a replacement for Stanton. His moderate stance in Virginia endeared him to the President and Republicans. When Stanton resigned, a few days later Johnson nominated Schofield, and Congress confirmed him. While serving as a brigadier general in the United States Army, Schofield now became the Secretary of War.